Frederick Douglass in Schindler's List. There are many similarities between the book Frederick Douglass and the movie Schindler's List. Slavery is being compared in both of these stories in many different ways. Similarities are shown throughout these two stories by the oppressors and the power of women. Slavery was first brought to America when the first African slaves were brought to a colony in Virginia in 1619. To aid in the production of crops such as tobacco, slavery was practiced throughout American colonies in the 17th and 18th centuries. A big invention that expanded slavery was the cotton gin. The cotton gin made an impact in many jobs and debate over slavery. The debate over slavery teared the nation apart, which then led to the American Civil War. The word Holocaust was historically used to describe a sacrificial offering burned on an altar. The Holocaust was a mass murder of 6 million European Jews, as well as members of some persecuted groups, by the German Nazi regime during the Second World War. Adolf Hitler was the leader of the Nazis that were killing all of the Jews. To Hitler, Jews were a threat to German racial purity and community. The final decision of Hitler was the Holocaust, filled with many concentration camps in awful times. Example 1. Oppressors. An example from Schindler's List was Schindler. Schindler was talking about why he should hire Polish people when Jewish people cost less. Schindler was looking at the cost of people and not looking at what they were truly like. Schindler's List contained many Jewish people that costed way less than the Polish people, which means the list would be bigger, filled with Jewish people. Another example of an oppressor from Schindler's List is Goethe. Goethe was the best example of an oppressor because when he was the one that led the concentration camp and did not think twice about shooting anyone. Goethe had no love for the Jews, and he would burn them in the piles as well. They had different stations even where they would burn the Jews, and that is a clear example of an oppressor. An example of an oppressor from Frederick Douglass is Captain Anthony. Captain Anthony treated people like animals. He fed the slaves like pigs and treated the slaves like pigs as well. The narrator states in Frederick Douglass, this was called mush. It was put into a large wooden tray or trough and set down upon the ground. And they treated the slaves like pigs and fed them like pigs as well. Covey was another example of an oppressor in Frederick Douglass, because they did not tell their slaves any information, nor did their slaves know any information except for the plantation that they were at. Also, the slaves were whipped for anything that they did, little or big. The narrator states in Frederick Douglass, I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic record containing it. And he also states, scarcely a day passed during the summer, but that some slave had to take the lash for stealing fruit. So this just shows that they weren't told any information about themselves, and they were punished for anything they ever did. Example 2. Power over women. Schindler was an example of having power over women because when he was at his birthday party, he kissed the Jewish girl, and she was very surprised, and that put her in a lot of danger as well. Since he kissed this little girl, she had to watch out for anything that could possibly end up happening to her. Even though Schindler's wife was a woman, she also had power over women. Since Schindler's wife was Catholic, she was putting up with all of his womanizing. This meant that even though Schindler was basically cheating on his wife at his birthday party and many other parties, she was still putting up with it. And she wasn't telling the other woman because she believed that since she was Catholic, this would not be the right thing to do. An example of having power over women in Frederick Douglass is Hugh. Hugh had an old lady who they were thinking was a grandma, living out in the woods with just a hut because they wanted her to suffer from loneliness. They wanted her to know what it felt like to have no one around her and to end up dying from this. The narrator states in Frederick Douglass, "She was of but little value, her frame already racked with the pains of old age and complete helplessness. Fast stealing over her once active limbs, they took her to the woods, built her a little hut, put up a little mud chimney, and then made her welcome to the privilege of supporting herself there in perfect loneliness, thus virtually turning her out to die." Covey was another example of having power over women because he was one of the plantation's owner who never let the kids be able to see their mothers, and he separated the mothers from their kids as well. The kids would go live with old ladies who were too old to work on the farm, and this never gave the chance for the woman and the daughter to grow up together. The narrator states in Frederick Douglass, "My mother and I were separated when I was but an infant, before I knew her as my mother. Frequently, before the child has reached its 12th month, its mother is taken from it and hired out on some farm a considerable distance off, and the child is placed under the care of an old woman, too old for field labor." Frederick Douglass and Schindler's List had many similarities with the ways that they portrayed slavery in their stories. Being oppressors and not treating the woman right was just two simple examples of what was happening during this time. These two different stories can show us different ways that we need to treat people, and how we need to respect others as well. Goethe was a very poor example of this and was doing the opposite of what Jesus tells us to do. Jesus wants us to love on everyone and to show our love and His love to everyone we come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. "Treat others as you would want to be treated," says Luke 6:31. This is a great quote from the Bible that explains how we should be loving our community and everyone around us in this world.